So these are interesting times in this media landscape that we're all in right now. We get to hear some of the inner nuances of some of the stories, such as Allan Houston and how his negotiations took place with James Dolan. Keep in mind, just 2 years prior, before signing that $100 million contract, the NBA owners and players were struggling to come to an agreement, as pretty much that 98-99 season was lost, even having no All-Star game, and Michael Jordan delaying his retirement in order to help the players maintain leverage and get a good deal. Believe it or not, the Knicks are fortunate to have an owner in James Dolan who actually wants to win, especially in today's landscape where the NBA has a lot of private equity money coming in, and putting together a winning team doesn't necessarily mean revenues being at an all-time high. And in that rush to be successful, James Dolan has made moves to sort of skip the process. We've seen the Knicks not value draft picks in the early 2000s, and they were also too quick to give out large contracts of players who had a short wave on other teams, aka McDyess, Eddie Curry, Jerome Williams. Again, I can't fault James Dolan. He definitely wants to be successful. In the second part of this segment, we'll hear directly from him, as he even admits that he was a little bit too much in a hurry. Shit, come to think of it, that same situation sort of played out in that Melo trade. NBA insider Amino Hassan gives great insight of what took place in that negotiation table with Allan Houston and James Dolan. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Have I never told you my favorite slide the money on a piece of paper story ever?
No.
Allan Houston plays for the Knicks. They're playing great. They go to the finals. The second year they lose in the conference finals. He's been awesome. He's outperformed his contract. He opts out. And his agent is like, hey, let's go in aggressive and ask $77 million on the next deal. And they said they sat down and the Knicks slid the paper over and it said $100 million, and they just got up and said, let me see that pen. They never negotiated. They never said anything. They were going to start at 77 and work their way down to like 74. The Knicks started at 100 and said, let me see your pen.
Why are you eating that piece of paper, Allan Houston? None of your business. I miss breakfast.
Allan Houston at the time definitely deserved that money, as he proved himself in the playoffs. But again, we got to remember that was only 2 years after the lockout, which really had the owners at a standstill because they were not comfortable with guys like Kevin Garnett signing that $126 million deal while coming off his third season. But you know, James Dolan does have that reputation of taking care of his guys. And right here, he speaks on past mistakes, trying to rush the process on the way to success. I wouldn't correlate it too much to the Allan Houston situation, but the signings of Jerome Williams, Eddie Curry, dismissing a lot of the draft picks from the early 2000s. The media is always stating that you can't rebuild in a big market, which has always been not true. Rebuilding is part of the championship process. But you guys check out what James Dolan had to say, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
As an owner, you have to be patient, right? The guys set out a plan. When I get impatient is when we veer off the plan. Right?
Got it.
Reach for a shiny thing, right?
Giannis. Got it.
Melo, let's add that on to it.
Got it.
Yeah, and think we can, win a championship or build a championship team in one fell swoop. I've been at this now for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. And I can tell you that, it does happen once in a while, but I don't think that's the way that, I don't think that's how we're going to win.
James Dolan nowadays looks like a new man. That's what happens when you hire good people. Leon Rose is definitely doing his thing. He has a great team of people assembled working with him. And I gotta say, it's gonna be very interesting to see how Dolan moves going forward with all this private equity money coming in, just these new billionaires buying up these teams for $8 to $6 billion, $10 billion. A lot of those guys don't have that legacy like Dolan has with his father and the success with the Knicks. So who knows? A lot of them going to be more cash flow centric. Just look up the amount of owners that was passing around the Dallas Mavericks like a $2 hoe before Mark Cuban purchased that team. Again, these are interesting times for James Dolan. The local TV money's drying up. That leverage that the big market teams used to have, not caring about paying into the luxury tax, those days are over. Those penalties are just way too severe. So a different mindset and approach is something that you have to have.